I read something recently that it'll resonate with me for a long time, probably the rest of my life and my career, but is to be transformative rather than transactional. And I think, the podcast has been that, and that's kind of what my interaction and kind of my influence on people and their decision, whether they choose me or other people to do the case, but even during the case to have, conversations of different topics or businesses or patient aspirations, whatever, where, you can help in their transformation. That's what kind of stokes my fire and keeps me going.
That was the voice of Daniel A. Danyo, MD, founder and physician at North Atlanta Hair Restoration, a boutique medical practice solely dedicated to the diagnosis and treatment of male and female hair loss. And you're listening to Hair Restoration with Dr. Daniel A. Danyo. I'm your host, Clark, and all season long we're speaking with Dr. Danyo about how he and his team at North Atlanta Hair Restoration are helping his patients transform their everyday lives for the better. In this episode, Dr. Danyo breaks down the techniques he uses to conduct a shaveless FUE. It's a procedure not offered by many clinics. He explains why the procedure can be challenging and how he and his skilled team have mastered the process, resulting in their patients walking away with little to no noticeability of the donor site. There's so much to talk about, so let's dive right in. Dr. Danyo, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Clark?
I'm doing well. Welcome. We are gonna connect here for a few minutes. I always look forward to our sessions as usual. And today's topic, I think we just dive right into this. You've got some examples and you've got some stories about some challenging shaveless FUE procedures that, even though they were challenging, they ended up being successes. And, this is a testament to, your approach to the work you do. It's, if someone is new to the podcast, we often are talking a little about your work in hair transplantation, but also it's your work in a lot of ways, like as an artist, because, these kinds of procedures, it really is a trained skill that you've developed years and years and years. And there's even doctors out there. I've heard from you that they're like, wait a second, shaveless FUE, there's no way someone could do that many, or they have hesitations, but you have a different approach than them. So we're going to talk a little about that. Here's some stories, here's some examples, and just, have a few minutes to connect. So how does all that sound to you?
Sounds great.
So just in a nutshell, shaveless FUE, can you describe really quickly what that is, and especially how that's different than years ago and the 80s and some of the bad images people have in their minds when they think about procedures like this?
Sure. Well, the shaveless FUE stands for follicular unit excision, where we take individual follicles. So we're not, using a scalpel and cutting out hair-bearing scalp, and then you end up with staples or sutures in the back of your head with a linear scar. We're using a very small punch, and we are extracting hairs. Now, with the shaveless procedure, which is different than long hair transplant, we've talked about that on other podcasts, but the shaveless procedure, the graft, the hair within the graft is actually short. And my technique of doing it is that I cut and core the hair at the same time.
Cut and core?
Yeah, the hair at the same time.
How does that, if I had to visualize this, what's that kind of like?
So the cutting device is a round device. My punch is trumpeted. So there's kind of a cutting at about 30 degrees away from the graft, which is actually advantageous to cutting hair. So it's basically a gentle movement down to cut the hair, and then pushing in to graft the follicle. So the way I do it, I don't pre-cut the hair. So a lot of places, they even have you come in the night before, where they take small scissors and they basically cut hair and then leave longer hair to conceal the donor site. So my technique is I I don't pre-cut with scissors. I do it at the same time, so it's much faster. If you, let's say you do 2,000 grafts, which is kind of our average graft case for shaveless, it the if you're cutting, individual hairs with a scissor, it's exhausting. I mean, your thumb gets tired.
That's a
You
hair by hair.
Yes, and you end up trimming more hairs than you actually take. And so at the end of the case, the donor site looks thinner than it should. With my technique, where I cut and core at the same time, there are no short hairs left in the donor site. There, all the grafts, have short hairs, but the rest of the hair is kept long. So when people leave, I mean, their donor site looks very similar to as when they walked in. So somebody would choose a shaveless case if they wanted to conceal the donor site. And this also goes true for the top of the head. A lot of places, the only option is if you're a male is to shave your whole head. And it's obviously so much easier to extract and place grafts in that setting. But when we're placing with the implanter pens, the technique that I place, which is the stick and place technique, these pens, the grafts are loaded, and I basically almost inject them in between the existing hairs. So it works very well when there's hair on top of the head, which actually most of my patients, they're not totally bald. They have, hair, and that we can blend in without damaging the other hair. And it's much faster, much cleaner, and much safer. But we can do it, with any hair length, from like a one guard to 18, 20 inches, whatever long. I've done shaveless techniques even on people with dreadlocks, that have dreadlocks that are 2 feet long.
I can't even imagine. It's just because there's some folks out there who would say that's just not possible. But you found a way. I feel like they should call this the Danio technique.
Well, I mean, I didn't come up with shaveless, and I think there's a huge need. I mean, 70% of my practice is shaveless, especially my out of town patients. They want concealability, and they want somebody who's skilled at actually getting good grafts, and doing the whole procedure, but doing it in a way that it's concealable. And it's hard to do, and not a lot of places do it. But there's a couple components. I mean, one is just the skill to do it, so, and you need a very skillful team, because when I core a graft, which loosens the graft or the follicle, my technicians have to go through and find the grafts, and it can be challenging, especially if it's like an African American female with very long, curly hair. That's not easy. It's a huge management thing, but we work as a team. We have six hands on your head at one time,
What?
and we're able to do this. Yeah.
Whoa, I did not realize it could be that many at one time.
Oh yeah, but I have
Because
to
that
be.
speeds it up. I mean,
It does.
you're still doing everything, but I mean, these are someone sitting down in a chair for several hours, hanging out with you and your team,
Yep.
working through this, and they want to have that concealment. So when they go back home, so you did mention a lot of people from out of town, they're able to go back home, and it doesn't look like anything happened yet until you say usually about 6 months is what you aim for the
Well,
growth.
I mean, at 6 months, people have really good growth. From what the way we do the procedure, we have great growth at 6 months.
So
Now,
you come in and you leave looking the same, but you give
yes,
it some time, and you're set up for good things.
yeah. I mean, some other. I look at people that have had previous strip harvest procedures. Um, you know, it's asking a lot to say, what, we have to shave your head to do an FUE procedure, where that scar is going to be unearthed, and it might take 2 to 3 weeks to have enough length to actually cover that scar. I mean, that's asking a lot for somebody to kind of be reclusive. It might be easier now with COVID and people working from home, but socially, it's not acceptable for a lot of people. But
Mm.
doing a shaveless, after people have had strip scars is just awesome. In fact, Monday I did a shaveless procedure on somebody who had 3 strip scars. I mean, there were 3 individual scars, and we combined that with beard extraction to get 1,500 grafts, and we just kind of did some fill-in work. He had really good coverage from the crown to the frontal hairline, and we've refined a little bit of his hairline with single grafts, and super happy. Um, and and he said he's out and about and nobody knows anything's going on 2 days out from his procedure. I talked to him today. So that's kind of the magic of shaveless and concealability. Now, one thing I get when I have consults, a lot of people have in their mind that the actual graft quality, is not as good shaveless as it is shaved. I've had patients say, well, I saw a couple people and they said that I wouldn't recommend doing shaveless because you're not going to have as good of results.
So they
And
saw
that,
people, it's like other doctors out there suggesting this, or anybody.
yes, and there may be some things on the internet about it because I mean it is
There's
hard.
lots of things on the internet about
Yes,
all
but
sorts of stuff.
that hardness is something that we do daily. 70% of the time for men and 100% of the time for women. I don't shave any part of the head for when I do female cases. So um, so we're in kind of a different world. As far as um, getting excellent grafts, and then doing it in a very timely manner. I'm at a point now that I can do a shaveless case almost at the same speed as doing a shave case, and a lot of it is dependent on the same variables, whether there's tethering or um, you know maybe some bleeding or different variables can slow things down. But if the variables are you know good, I mean I can literally fly through a shaveless case, and complete it rapidly. So the key is, if you're thinking of shaveless, the grafts can absolutely be done in a pristine manner and be done effectively so that the results are not impaired. I wouldn't be doing shaveless if that was the case.
Well, so someone might be doing searches on the internet. They might be talking to other doctors, other people, and they say, it's you're not gonna get the same results, but you found a better path through that. It's really innovative.
Yeah, but it's a mentality thing, and I've just been persistent, and I know that there's a need. I've always kind of been empathetic to people's needs my whole life. It's something my parents really instilled in me, and so for me, my practice, my patients are up at the top, and everything funnels down from it. My success or the growth of the practice, and so putting the patients first means that I need to really work hard. I've been doing this for shaveless procedures since about 2013. Um, that I've just become adept at doing these things effectively, right, quickly, and doing it in a way where when people leave, the whole experience is can be shocking, in a good way. Especially when the spouse comes in, they can't believe that we just did all that, and there's really not that much noticeability.
Wow, that is. Yeah, you would almost kind of think like you go in for a haircut or something like that, like you instantly look different. That's gotta feel kind of weird for the people leaving. Then they just gotta trust the process and let the time go by, and you start to see that growth, and you do the check-ins
Yep.
to as that's going along, and it is. You said the word magic, and that's the word I'm thinking about too.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other day we were going to talk about some instances with shaveless. Actually, I'd say it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had an African American male that came in, and he was scheduled to actually have a shaved case, 2,000 grafts. And he came in with pretty long hair. I mean, his hair was probably an inch and a half, 2 inches long. And he said, I've decided to do a shaveless procedure. Um, Now we had actually had another smaller case scheduled at about 2:30 or 3. Um, and he was actually running a little behind. So we didn't really technically get going till about maybe a little bit before 8. So we just kind of had to lay the hammer down, and we were able to do 2,000 shaveless on an African American male, and in a very quick manner. The whole case was done prior to the patient coming in at 2:30. The second one. So
Whoa. That's
yeah,
like a what is it? The pit crew, NASCAR pit crew almost of like moving quickly but efficiently.
yes, yeah, and I can't give enough praise to my staff. They just really have such a great kind of tireless attitude. They take on challenges, and they have such great hands and kind of coordination. We don't really even have to talk to each other during the case much, because we just kind of move around each other, and we're able to, like I said, have 6 hands on the head, and be grafting and pulling in the midst of having a full head of hair. Um, and So it's fun to be kind of on the back end of doing this. Initially, I mean, 250 grafts was like torture. Trying to do a shaveless procedure, but I've done in one day. I've done 3,100 grafts in one day, shaveless.
Man,
That's kind of my record.
that's got to be, yeah. It's definitely a personal record, and it's kind of like a, hey, those people who don't believe, take a look at this.
Yeah, but I think just kind of my message to people is that if concealability is really important to you, it's something that we can come up with a game plan to make this so that nobody knows you had it done until you know the results come in and people are saying, "Man, you look great." That's
Oh
that's what I
yeah.
want. I don't want them to say, "Did you have hair transplant?"
No, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That's yeah. It's kind of hair takes a while to grow, but it's almost kind of that gradual, slow increase and that slow improvement.
Yes.
You almost wouldn't want something to look different overnight, even if you could. That's like,
Exactly.
wait, what happened? That's kind of unusual.
Exactly. So that's where the long hair can come in. I we do that from time to time. I would say most of the long hair cases I've done have been more on the crown, and I've done people that have more like natural recession in their forehead. We can do bring it down like a centimeter or a half inch or something with long hair, and be really stealth. But the shaveless, like I said, it's a short hair that's moved. We just cut and core each hair as we go. So we eliminate all that time of trimming, and then we don't you don't have a donor site that has a lot of trimmed small hairs in the donor site. The rest of the hair is not touched, so the donor site's concealed.
That makes sense. And you were mentioning just a moment ago about your team. So, what can someone expect when they're doing their research, they're thinking about their options, they end up scheduling a time to come visit? You just were bragging on your team. How do they fit into all of this, and what how does all this work? How does the magic happen?
Yeah, so let's say you call the office. Typically, you'll speak with either Kelly or Becky up front, and they have a lot of knowledge on the overall process, and they kind of give options as far as what kind of consultation you want. We can do online consults, either by phone, where people send in pictures or videos, and then we can discuss. That's generally what I do. We can do video conferencing that's HIPAA compliant, and we have a nice texting app that does video. Again, that's compliant, and we can do it that way, or people can come in. But generally, we Becky and Kelly kind of go through the process to kind of determine where people are. I mean, a lot of people do call and they're more curious. They haven't really made up their mind. They don't even know what hair transplant is a lot of times. So oftentimes there's a conversation, and there's a foundation that's laid to help them, but not necessarily, a relationship with us that's kind of being fostered. When it gets to more of the consultation point, then that's when I get involved. I do all the consultations, and I'm involved right from the start. And then prior to the case, we've got videos that we send. We have paperwork. We've got so much on our website. Somebody from my clinical team will call, and we kind of get people prepared for the procedure. There's really not much to prepare. And then, we do the procedure. I'm totally involved in the case. I work with my technicians. We get before and after pictures that day, set up follow-up visits. We have a great texting app called Clara, Klara.
Okay.
And it's not like a regular portal. It's really a texting app. And you can text pictures. We do all of our follow-ups, as far as communication. If people, especially for people out of town, sometimes I'll do video conferencing for the follow-ups or just pictures, or people come in. So I think our success has always been communication from the start. I think the podcast, we talked about this off air, that the podcast has been great to kind of educate patients and really kind of get them to know us before they actually even meet us, or even give us a phone call. And that I think that's vital, to have kind of a relationship that's communicative and informative and empowering. I read something recently that it'll resonate with me for a long time, probably the rest of my life in my career, but is to be transformative rather than transactional. And I think, the podcast has been that, and that's kind of what my interaction and kind of my influence on people and their decision, whether they choose me or other people to do the case. But even during the case, to have conversations of different topics or businesses or patient aspirations, whatever, where you can help in their transformation. That's what kind of stokes my fire and keeps me going.
I love that. And so, yes, during the procedure, it can be several hours, and you're, it's you and them and some of your technicians also. So you definitely have that opportunity to have a lot of conversations. Now, in the back of an Uber or a Lyft, sometimes it's like, yeah, you want to talk to the driver, and sometimes you're like, you know what, I just want to kind of chill out and relax, and maybe they're going to listen to an audiobook or something. So that's an option too.
That's absolutely an option.
Already I'm sure there's some anxiety.
And some people want oral sedation where they're literally sleeping most of the day. Kind of the day kind of develops, and but the key is that the majority of my folks say that the experience was awesome, and it takes a lot of work from everyone in the office from start to finish and afterwards to have people say that the experience was awesome. And it's not just the procedure. I mean, it's everything. And we work hard on that. We're constantly building on that, having meetings, trying to do more information with blogging and YouTube videos and the podcasting and so it's fun for us, and I think it's educational and empowering for the patients.
That's great. Well, Dr. Danyo, as always, thank you for taking the time and just kind of walking us through the common questions, the common things, and taking those challenging cases, but still finding success. I always appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
I am too. Well, have a great night.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to Hair Restoration with Dr. Daniel A. Danyo. Book your consultation today with Dr. Danyo by calling 678-845-7521 or online at nahairrestoration.com. And be sure to follow, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to your audio content.